What's happening, guys? It's Coach Peter here. Wanted to address some questions that I was actually presented with. And the question was, how much do I charge for a coaching session? And how do I charge it? So it's really two kind of different pieces. And I'm not talking about billing systems. I'm talking about the dollar amount that I charge for the coaching and, the framework that a client will engage with me, right? So I've seen a lot of people go out there and really pitch the idea of selling packages, 3 month subscriptions, and I'm not poo-pooing that. But I think I have tried, whether it was me independently or with clients or with corporate partners that I was building wellness programs for, we have tried just about everything. And part of that was because sometimes the client that was hiring me to build a wellness program had some of their own compensation framework that they wanted to stick with. So we kind of tried to make some things work. So I have tried everything from referral partners where the coaches were free, but they would refer business and then we would get referral fees in for that. I have tried it where it was just a grant from a company saying it was a charitable outreach and they would just give us money on an ongoing basis and we would pay coaches out of it, pay for resources, pay for conferences, pay for workshops, those types of things. I have worked with people where we have billed the client directly the whole boat, the whole charge for the coaching session, where we have billed them a fraction of the coaching session, and then the remainder was supplemented by a grant or an endowment. I have tried selling packages where it was 3 months that would include one session a week, or 3 months that was for a certain amount of time. I have sold annual subscriptions. We have sold monthly subscriptions where it was an unlimited amount of access for a monthly subscription fee. So I feel like we have tried just about everything. And ultimately, what it comes down to is the way I charge is if we meet and we spend time together, you pay me for that time. Plain and simple. And one of the reasons is it's one of the easiest to understand and it's the most transparent. So a lot of people like making a transaction and handing off money and getting something back in return. And in this case, it's the advice, the guidance, the mentoring, the coaching that I give, and the time that we do it. And so it's very clear, it's very transparent, it's easy for people to wrap their head around, and it feels very fair. The other thing that it does is that it helps me not convolute my client's relationship with other things that might lead them to be skeptical or worry, right? So in a lot of cases where we say, hey, if you work with this company or this company, we get a $20 referral fee or $100 referral fee or whatever it might be. If you buy a product, right, or maybe I don't even know how much we make, but if we're working with a financial institution, if you open an account with them, it's really your relationship as a customer over the next few years that pays for this program. Those things can be fairly broad and not very exacting. And what it does is it can sometimes, not in a polluting way, but sometimes it leads to some question in the client's mind about, the advice that I'm getting, is it right for me? Is it the best advice, or am I trying to be moved into a product? Am I trying to be moved to a referral partner when I shouldn't be? And I would say in all the cases I've ever worked with, we've made it very clear with coaches and with the staff that we only want to put people into things or connect them with things that are going to be right and valuable and suitable for them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to feel like that no matter how good of a job you do. The other problem with the packages that I have had is that often they are equivalent to a certain amount of time or a cadence. And the problem with that is it kind of forces everyone, regardless of their financial situation, into a single experiential track. And what I mean by that is, on one hand, I have worked with a girl, and she was way behind on a credit card bill. She had kind of variable working hours. Her income kind of moved around a little bit, and she didn't have enough money to stay ahead of her bills. And what she was doing after work on Fridays is going back to her apartment and hiding out for the weekend so that she wouldn't take phone calls and she wouldn't ask to be going out with friends or grab dinner because she didn't have any money and she was so embarrassed, and it was a really stressful time. What we needed to do was get her caught up with her bills, right? Or at least get her on a payment plan where she's not perpetually behind. And so as I was talking with her, one of the things that we didn't want to do is I did not want to force her into another session the following week. I wanted to have her do some things over the next day and then reconnect with her in 2 days, right? And then what we wanted to do is start, getting us back on a payment plan, right? And then start negotiating interest rates, start negotiating payments, start coming up with a spending plan, right? How she was going to use maybe an envelope or a cash method to start budgeting things out, those types of things, see what other resources she could do, maybe free up some cash, whatever. But we had to triage the situation very quickly. And over a couple of weeks, we probably met 6 times. And the sessions were based on when we needed to come back to something. If she was going to be able to do something tomorrow, then we were going to meet again after that. If she was going to be able to do something in 3 days, we were going to meet after that. So what we didn't end up having is like this framework where I was forcing her into waiting unnecessarily for something that we could have met about right away. The other problem with it is on the flip side, you might have people that are in a good spot, and there's nothing really urgent about it. It's more about kind of learning new habits and trying out new things, and meeting this week and next week and the week after that isn't the right cadence either, right? In the case for the girl that I was working with on her debt, once a week wasn't frequent enough. But for the other people, once a week might be too frequent. Things just aren't going to move that quickly, especially if we're talking about financial independence and some of those things where, hey, I want to go out and do some research, listen to some podcasts, get some ideas on savvy shopping or travel hacks or whatever it might be, right? That might be a week-long exercise or maybe longer because it's just going to take a while to absorb that information. And then maybe even some time to internalize it and then come up with some questions, right? So what I don't want to do is force the conversation to happen in a week. We might think, hey, well, that's going to keep them on pace. It just doesn't work like that. And for some people, then it might feel like we're forcing our framework onto them regardless of what their needs are. And that's really the key here is what's appropriate for the client. And if your contract and experience framework and the framework that you use to work with people doesn't fit their needs, then it's going to feel forced. It's not going to feel as valuable, and they're going to feel like they are part of a mass-produced product and not necessarily a customized product. And that's really the big advantage of us as coaches is that everything is customized, right? We look at all of the underlying things for a specific person and then work with them on their particular needs. So that is the framework of how I charge. Now, how much do I charge? That is pretty simple. Right now, I've fallen on $150 an hour. And we could dive into the details here a little bit on the $150 an hour because you might say, well, is it $75 for 30 minutes, $100 for an hour? It's $150 for an hour all the time. And if you use 30 minutes, it's still $150. And if we go into 2 hours, it's $300. So there's no scaling to get a better deal on anything. I know if I'm jumping on a call with you, you're going to get billed $150. If you want to use the full hour, that's great. But if we only are going to go 20 or 30 or 40 minutes, you're going to also spend $150. But you'll be responsible for kind of giving me the cues that, hey, I feel good about what we've gotten accomplished in this time. Now, here is the key. And here's the big problem that I see with financial coaches is that they're not recognizing that it's the advice and guidance and experience of working with the coach that's valuable, not the time, right? So if I give you the answers you want, you're motivated to do them, you've got a good plan in place to go after them, and we've only needed 20 minutes to get there, you're going to say, hey, that was worth the $150. Not that, hey, I only got 20 minutes of my 60 possible minutes, so now I want to fill it up with something else. It's always a calculation of how much they're paying and how much they feel they got out of it, right? And very rarely it does adding another 5 minutes or adding more time to it really matter. If you get the experience that you want, the answers that you want, the guidance that you want, and you feel you're empowered and you are ready to break free, and I'm holding you back because of that time, and we're going to spend another 20 minutes so that you get your value. That is not adding value. It's adding negative value. It's taking away value. And it's strange because we fight that sometimes as financial coaches and saying, hey, you've got more time. Let's talk about something else. Now, it's all right. If they want to spend that time, I'm all for it. If they want to tell me their life story or tell me what their kids are doing and how much of a scholarship they got to go to college, that's great. That's their time. I'm willing to do that. And if they're finding value in that, that's the real key. But if we don't, and people are busy, and a lot of the people that I work with are working a job, have a family, have life responsibilities, and they want to move on to the next thing as quickly as possible, that's up to them. I'm not going to hold them back and hold them into a session just because I want their time. Again, the $150 is really where I have found it the sweet spot to be for me and my experience with my coaching clients. I don't bill them right after the session. I do that once a month. So basically at the very end of the month or on the first of the month, I send out invoices to everyone. So I do an inventory of all the hours that I spent with everyone, send them out their customized electronic invoice, and they'll pay me electronically. I do pay a small fee for processing, whether it's PayPal or QuickBooks or whatever you're using to charge them, or Square. I've used a variety of different, depending on what's convenient for them, including Venmo and Chase QuickPay and Zelle and the whole nine. So really, I do that once a month, and that just gives it some consistency. They know to expect the bill. They don't have to think about whether they're going to get charged right after a session. But it means that if I'm putting in the time, I get paid for it. Now, I want to answer the question on no-shows. People put this all the time, and people have like these really extreme processes to chase after no-shows. I will tell you what, if you don't have no-shows, you're in a good spot. I actually can't even recall the last time I had a no-show. There have been times, and usually it's been, say, a family emergency, a work issue, or something like that, and I'm going to talk about when I do hours. That's always kind of a factor. But typically, I don't really have no-shows. In fact, at one point, I started keeping a separate list of no-shows. I was ready to queue them up so that I knew if people weren't there, what could we do? What was the reason? Should they not be billed? Those types of things. And what I found is after months and months and months, I wasn't putting any names on there. So I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. But what I'm saying is that if you're getting no-shows, there are probably some legitimate reasons. Medical emergency, family emergency, work priorities, life priorities, and those types of things. But what you want to do is you want to be one of those priorities in those people's lives. And so you want to have that time blocked off, and you want them to think of that time as so valuable, so important, and your time is scarce, that they will jump on there, right? So if they have some things like, hey, I really need to get my oil changed, well, I'm going to wait till tomorrow, or I'll push that off till next week because I'm going to spend that time with Pete, because I find our time talking about finance is so valuable, right? So if you're having no-shows, I think you need to evaluate the experience that you're giving those people, the coaching experience that you're conveying, because I think that is fundamentally the key there. So if they don't show, though, they will get billed for that time, right? If they reschedule and it's ahead of time, even sometimes if they've rescheduled a few hours before we've needed to meet, they don't get billed as a no-show. But otherwise, I would bill as a no-show. Now, you might be saying, how much money do you make doing this? So I'm going to give you the numbers here because I did them bottom up, and they seem to work out exactly right. So $150 a session. And last year, my goal was to average 3 sessions a day, and the average came out pretty close. But not every day has 3 sessions. Sometimes it's a busy Wednesday or busy Tuesday or something like that. They're usually not busy Mondays, and they are not usually busy Fridays. I will just say that. Most of the appointments that I have are between Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I'll talk about why I force coaching sessions into specific days. But at $150 an hour times 3 days, $450 a working day. There are about 250 working days a year, and so that comes out to $112,500. That is almost spot on what I made in coaching last year. It's actually, according to my billing numbers, about $5,000 short, so there was some additional coaching income there from coaching, but because I think I was right at about 117 or 118. So, but that's pretty darn close. And so you can see though there, I think the 150 number is affordable. It also is worthwhile of your time, and you can bust 6 figures without spending your whole day coaching. Now, as we talk about how many coaching sessions you have, I will tell you that I have done as many as 22 in a day. For a period of time, I was averaging 7 or 8 a day, and that's where, as I've got more experience in this, I've kind of limited my coaching clients, the target market, as well as the number of sessions down to about 3. So it really is going to depend on some of your experience level, what you can charge, kind of your knowledge level, and how much time you're spending in this. But I will also say that of that time, if I'm meeting with someone for 60 minutes, I may be putting 65 minutes of total time into that coaching session. So I don't prep for it, and I don't do a lot of post work except other than maybe saving the file of the notes that I've taken during that call. So a lot of people, and the problem with it is when they do packages, as I was talking about, is you feel like you need to come prepared with stuff. And that's can be part of coaching, but it's not really true coaching. And so what ends up happening is that some people will spend hours beforehand doing some worksheets or some exercises and prepping, and ultimately their average billing time, the amount of money that they're making for the amount of effort they're putting in, is actually much lower than their billable amount, right? So even if they're charging $150 an hour, and they put in an hour beforehand to prep and an hour post to kind of clean up and think about the next session, all of a sudden now you've taken it from $150 an hour to $50 an hour. You've taken a 1 hour session and made it a 3 hour exercise, and now you can only really get 2 in a day. So I've actually even heard of people saying that they don't take any notes during coaching sessions. I usually take some notes, but there have been times where I don't take any notes, and especially when I'm meeting with people in person, sometimes I will or sometimes I won't take notes, because I really always want to keep that coaching session feeling like it's a conversation, because ultimately that's really what it is. And if it's two people collaborating on things, people are going to feel real more invested in that. So that's how I charge, the framework, just time for money, how much I charge, $150 an hour, and how much I made last year doing coaching. So hopefully that helps. See you later.